الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا ابن رسول الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة غريب غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء يا ليتنا يا ليتنا يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وما توفيقي إلا بالله عليه توكلت وإليه أنيب. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. During the time of Prophet Nuh, him and his community, just like all of the other prophets, faced a lot of hostility and aggression from the people, the community, the majority, who rejected his message. On a daily basis, they would be facing physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse. They were persecuted, they were oppressed. Some narrations even depict how gruesome they were hostile towards Prophet Nuh, a prophet of Allah. One narration says that a group from those who rejected his message, they ganged up on him one day as he was walking through the alleyways and beat him up, and he lied down on the ground for 3 days unconscious, with blood oozing from his ears until he woke up after 3 days. That's the type of persecution Prophet Nuh and his followers would face on a daily basis. Prophet Nuh lived for 2,500 years, according to our narrations, the longest lived prophet. But 950 years was before the flood, and he was preaching to the people, to the community, every day, and facing that kind of oppression and hostility from his people. Eventually they came to Prophet Nuh and they complained to him, his followers. They complained to him that this is too much for us to handle. Ask Allah to give us relief, to relieve us from these horrible people oppressing us, persecuting us every day. So Prophet Nuh raised his hands in du'as and asked Allah to bring down his punishment and relieve the believers. The answer came down. The angel brought him palm date seeds, and the angel told him, Allah tells you, plant these seeds. Once these seeds grow into trees, into palm dates, and they give fruit, that's when the punishment will come. So it wasn't, an immediate answer to him. They have to wait now. I looked it up. The average palm date needs around 7 to 10 years to grow from a seed and give fruit to fully mature. So that's what they did. They took the seeds, they planted them, they did what they're supposed to do, and they waited. After, let's say, around 10 years, these palm dates grew into mature trees. Spring season came, and the tree started giving fruit. They took the fruits and they waited that night. And the next morning, nothing happened. Everybody was shocked. They went to Prophet Nuh and they asked him, what's going on? Prophet Nuh didn't know either. So he asked Allah, and the answer came take these new dates, plant them. Once they grow, then the punishment will come. When his followers heard about this, his followers split into 3 groups. The first group rejected him, abandoned him. The second group, they were still on the fence. They were like, let's give it another chance. And the third group, they told Prophet Nuh, we will be loyal to you. We won't part ways with you till the end. Does that remind you of a group? The companions of Imam Al-Hussein A.S., what they told the Imam on the night of Ashura? No matter what happens to us, if this were to happen 1,000 times, or we be killed for your sake and resurrected and killed again, we won't leave you. So they took the seeds and they planted them for a third time. They planted them for a second time. They planted them and they did as they were told, and they had to wait another 10 years. So after 10 years, finally these new seeds grew, they gave fruit, they collected them, and they waited that night for the punishment. And once the morning came, exactly nothing happened. Again, very shocked, very disappointed. They went to Prophet Nuh and they complained to him, what's going on? So Prophet Nuh told them, I don't know either. So he asked Allah. The answer came back, the same exact like last time. Now take these new seeds, plant them again, and once they grow and give fruit, then the punishment will come. Same thing happened to his followers. One group abandoned him, another group remained with him. The narrations say that this continued for 7 times. Every single round taking around 10 years. After 70 years, Prophet Nuh was only left with a handful of followers, a handful of companions. He started off with a couple of thousand, but round after round, they started to leave and leave until only just a handful remained with him. Imagine, he was sent to a community for 950 years preaching as a prophet before the flood, and only a handful of people remained with him. So after the 7th time, they planted the trees, they grew, they bore fruit, they collected the fruits, and the next day, the ground started shaking, water started to sprout from the ground, started to rain, and very soon, very rapidly, the whole earth was covered in water. They boarded the ark and they were saved. All of those who abandoned the Prophet were ultimately destroyed. So history repeats itself. This occurrence that happened with Prophet Nuh has repeated multiple times in different eras with different prophets or different imams in some shape or form. The same thing happened with Imam Al-Hussein A.S. and his followers. When Imam Al-Hussein A.S. left from Medina to Mecca, and then from Mecca on his way to Kufa, narrations say that he had thousands with him. But when the Imam started to tell them that we're on our way towards death, we're on our way towards martyrdom, it's not all rosy ahead of us, groups started to leave the Imam. And when news reached that Muslim bin Aqil has been assassinated, has been murdered in Kufa, another group of the followers of the Imam, a larger group, left the Imam. So just like that, they started to decrease in number until there were just a few companions on the night of Ashura. And many of those followers, even from Kufa, they knew who the Imam was. They knew he is Sayyid Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. They knew he is the grandson of the Prophet. They knew he is an Imam, an infallible Imam. They wrote letters to him. They invited him to come over to Kufa to save them. But what happened on the night of Ashura, on the day of Ashura? Why was it just only a few people? They knew who the Imam was. Some might say they were too attached to the dunya. The real reason was they just weren't ready. It happened so quickly. The time came that the Imam called for help. The battle was going to happen. They were facing death. Many just weren't prepared. They weren't ready to make that sacrifice. They loved the Imam, they knew the Imam, They knew he's Sayyid Shabab Ahl al-Jannah, but they just weren't ready to make that sacrifice. Now the same thing will happen during the reappearance of Imam Al-Mahdi. Ajjalallahu ta'ala faraja. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Narrations tell us that when he reappears in Kufa, many people will come against him, his own followers. So the same thing really is going to continue to happen. At the time of Prophet Nuh, at the time of Imam Al-Hussein, at the time of Imam Al-Mahdi, when he reappears, the same is going to happen. Many are just not ready. It happened so quickly. His reappearance came, he's calling for help, and they're not ready. So how can we make sure this doesn't end up happening to us? Now is the time really to prepare. There's this misconception that we are waiting for the Imam. It's actually the opposite. The Imam is actually waiting for us. So it's awaiting, not waiting for the Imam. Awaiting means that there's something that we must be doing, actively preparing for the Imam. Imagine you have a guest coming over. At a particular time, 6 p.m., a guest is coming over. Do you just passively sit and wait? Or you're going to be actively preparing, setting up the table, making sure that dinner is going to be ready on time. Otherwise, if he comes and you're not ready, how's it going to look? So you're going to look embarrassed, ashamed in front of him. The same concept applies to the reappearance of the Imam. It's going to happen quickly, in a way that's unexpected. Many will say, I needed more time, I'm not ready. I still have to work on myself. My prayer situation is not right. My relationship with the Quran is not right. So my goal of tonight is just to remind ourselves of just general guidelines from the words of the Imams on how to prepare for the reappearance of the Imam. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a hadith, he says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says, أفضل أعمال أمتي انتظار الفرج. The best deed that we can do is awaiting, preparing for the reappearance of the Imam. That's the best deed you can do. Why? Because preparing for the reappearance of the Imam, which is أفضل أعمال أمتي, the best deed that you can be doing, is because it's directly aligned with what our purpose of this life is. The Imam, in a letter he writes, Imam Al-Mahdi himself, he writes in a letter towards one of his ambassadors. He writes, the one who wants to be part of my group, who wants to be from my supporters, there are two things he should do. فَلْيَعْمَلْ بِالْوَرَعِ وَمَحَاسِنَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. That's the formula to prepare for the Imam. To become God-conscious, pious, and to have the best morals you can possibly have. In other words, preparing for the Imam means to become the best possible version of yourself that you can possibly be. Ask yourself, from last year to this year, am I a better version of myself? If I have improved when it comes to praying on time, if I have improved when it comes to my relationship with my family, with my parents, that's a good sign. That's what the Imam wants. That's what he expects from us. He doesn't expect us to be donating hundreds of thousands of dollars, otherwise I won't make it. That's not where the key lies. That's good if you can, but that's not where the key lies. The Imam is looking for you. He wants you, your soul. He doesn't want your donations. He doesn't want money for you to give him. Remember, I mentioned yesterday this person during the time of Imam Al-Hussein a.s., Ubaydullah Al-Ju'fi. He crossed paths with the Imam. The Imam was heading up towards Kufa. He was coming down. He had a caravan of goods. He was a businessman. He crossed paths with the Imam. The Imam told him, I'm heading to my destiny. Come join us. I need your support. I need you. Come join us. What did he say? He said, I have so many commitments back home. I have this horse, I have this sword, I have some gold coins. I'd like to give this to you instead, but please excuse me. The Imam told him, I don't need this. I need you. The Imam invited him again, but he rejected. He told the Imam, I have commitments, I can't leave my family. The Imam told him, go, do what you have to do. Let not this be our case when the Imam reappears and we tell him that we have commitments, we still have things to take care of. That should all be done and settled, and you are ready, waiting for the reappearance of the Imam. In fact, one of the philosophies of praying on time has a connection to do with the reappearance of the Imam. There's a hadith that says, the one who is not already on wudu before the adhan, he has not respected salat. What does that mean? That means Allah expects us to have done our wudu, put on perfume, brushed our hair, tidied ourselves up before adhan, such that when it's time for adhan, you're ready to say Allahu Akbar and begin. Consider that period, the time of adhan, the Imam's reappearance. I'm not on wudu, if I'm not tidied up, ready for salat, and adhan sets in, consider that like as if the Imam reappeared, and I'm still not ready. I still have to do this, I have to do that. So make this a reminder on a daily basis, starting with Fajr. Set the alarm 15 minutes before the time of Fajr. And do your wudu, prepare, such that when the adhan sets in, you are ready. Same thing for Dhuhr. Same thing for Maghrib and Isha. Preparing for the Imam means becoming the best version of yourself. When we are not improving ourselves, adding value to ourselves, growing as individuals, we are in fact oppressing ourselves. Think about how much Allah has endowed us with. Like, there are just mind-boggling facts just about our physical body, let alone the mental dimension, the spiritual dimension, the metaphysical dimension, just the physical dimension of ourselves. How much Allah endowed us with. Things, I look up facts online saying things like the heart, the size of a closed fist, pumps 2,000 gallons of blood every single day. And all of the arteries and blood vessels and veins in our body, that network spans like 60,000 miles. Something mind-boggling. The human eye. How complicated is the eye that focuses, adjusts, has like millions of cells and parts working together, connecting from the eye to the optic nerve to the brain, sending signals back and forth in milliseconds. Consider your hand, your fist. When you open a door, when you turn that doorknob, how complicated is that? Robotics engineers know how complicated is that when they're designing a robot to open a door, how complicated that is. Realize Allah expects a lot from you. Life is not just about the basics, eating and drinking and having fun. Life has more to it. We must achieve our purpose before our time is up. Allah has given us a limited amount of time. Those who pass away, the hadith says, those who pass away, they start begging the angel of death, please, let me go back just so I can pray 2 rak'ahs. I just need 2 minutes. Can you do that for me? The angel tells him, I'm sorry. Khalas, your time is up. They realize how value time was. They start literally begging the angel according to the hadith. I just want to do 2 rak'ahs. I don't need much time. The angel tells him, it's over. Sorry. So realize the value of your time. A beautiful analogy just to describe the relationship of this world, purpose in this life. Let's go back to the 9 months spent in our mother's womb. Those 9 months that we spent in our mother's womb were so critical that they had a permanent effect on our physical being in this life. Yes or no? A mother, for example, who's a drug addict, God forbid, or drinks alcohol or smokes a lot, how is that going to reflect on the baby? Some babies, they're born with defects, with problems in their physical health. Many of the times it traces its roots back to those 9 months in the mother's womb. Studies show even that if a mother is very stressed, she goes through a lot of stress when she is pregnant. Some of the social, physical, psychological problems that the baby has when he grows up, some of them, they trace their roots back to that period. Those 9 months were so critical in our physical development. The same thing applies with this world and the next. Our development in this world, not more so physically, but more mentally and spiritually, that will permanently affect your afterlife. So just like those 9 months were critical for this life, these few years that we live in this life will determine eternally your afterlife. You have a purpose to achieve in this life. How much you grow, how much you develop, that will reflect in the afterlife your station in paradise. You see, paradise has levels. Does anybody know how many levels paradise has? Narrations say that there are as many verses in the Quran as there are levels in paradise. So about 6,200 levels in paradise. Between each level and the one right above it, it's such a big difference. Let me give you an example. In this world, there is this varying levels of existence. Let's say, for example, you have something delicious like a chocolate cake. You give this slice of cake to a cat, and you give the same slice of cake to a 10-year-old boy. Who enjoys it more? The 10-year-old boy. The cat, maybe it tastes the same as bread or grass or anything else. But the boy enjoys it. The boy has a higher level of existence. Does the cat know what it's like, that pleasure to have like 500 followers on Facebook? Does a cat know that? Doesn't know that. But a human does. He feels it. Does a cat know what it's like to be famous or to get a job raise? Or the cat doesn't know that. We know that. Same thing in paradise. Those who are in the higher levels, they enjoy things people in the lower levels, they don't know. They don't know what it's like. They're on the same level. It's not like a skyscraper, level 1, they're all in one level, they don't see the level 500. No, we're all on the same plane, but it's just a different experience. Those who make it to the higher levels, they enjoy the paradise more than those in the lower levels. Think about that. Is it worth it to do something that will sacrifice your ability to ascend the higher levels of paradise? Alive from here, hurting someone's feelings from there, praying Fajr a little bit late, praying Maghrib a little bit late, not taking your religion seriously. All of this will affect your level in the afterlife. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Another analogy to describe life in this world is the example of a diamond. Have you seen, for example, that material that the tip of your pencil is made of? What is that material called? Graphite, exactly. Graphite, basically, when you look at the raw material, it's like a dark, ugly, gray, opaque rock. Nothing special about it. Diamonds that you see, they're made out of the same chemical composition as that dark, gray, ugly-looking graphite rock. They're both made out of carbon, same exact composition. How are diamonds formed? These rocks of graphite, deep into the Earth's surface, they're subjected to high temperatures and high pressure. This extreme environment reshapes, restructures the carbon molecules over time, ultimately, it turns into a diamond because of those that extreme environment, high temperature and high pressure. Same thing when it comes to the human body, the human soul. When Allah gives us tests and trials and difficulties and obligations to perform, all of these are designed in a particular way to crystallize our soul, to turn it into a diamond, such that when the veils are lifted and we depart from this world, you see the effects of your hard work. You see the quality of your soul. You see the level of your rank in paradise. This is basically our purpose in life, growth. That's why it's very highly recommended to ask Allah for a long life. The more time you have, the more time you have to spend investing in yourself and growing and spiritually maturing, because all of that is going to affect your final home in the afterlife. How much you develop, that will reflect on your situation in the afterlife, your house, your place that you will stay in paradise. And this is exactly what it means to prepare for the reappearance of the Imam. It's directly connected to our very purpose in life. It's to become the greatest, the best possible version of yourself. When you work on yourself to develop qualities like trustworthiness, loyalty, honesty, all of this is adding value to your soul, and this is what you take with you to the afterlife. Your rank in paradise is a reflection of your soul right now. Ask yourself, am I really an honest person, a loyal person, a trustworthy person, an empathetic person, a caring person? If the answer is yes, this is a good indicator of what your situation will be like in the afterlife. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Now keep in mind that we in this life are being tested. So you're not going to see the results immediately. Things take time. Just like the person who starts lifting weights, he's not going to see the results immediately. You might be praying Fajr on time every single day for a year. But after a year, 2 years, you don't feel anything has changed. Is there something wrong? It could be. You're doing your obligation on one side, but on the other side, you're still lying and backbiting and doing ghiba and namima. That's spoiling all of your hard work. But let's put this on the side. Let's say you're not doing any of that. You find yourself praying Fajr every single day on time. But after a year or 2 years, I don't feel much spiritual growth. I don't feel like my interaction in Salat is getting better. Is that a problem? Not necessarily. It could be a test from Allah. Allah wants to see you. Are you still willing to pray even if you don't feel like it? Yes, we all love those moments when we feel like praying. We're like motivated, we're encouraged, and we enjoy that prayer. But many other times, it's like, I don't feel like praying. Is there something wrong? Not necessarily. Ya muqallib al-qulub. Allah is the one who changes the situation of your heart. Sometimes it's because of a test that He's subjugating you towards. Allah wants to see, are you still willing to worship Him, even if you don't feel like it, even if your heart is dry? It's part of the test. One quick story to illustrate this, there was just the wisdom of how Allah works. Sometimes, most of the times in fact, especially when it comes to believers who are ascending the higher ranks, the test just keeps getting harder and harder. Many times, if not most of the times, the results take a long time to show. Maybe even to a point where you don't see the results in this world, only in the afterlife. It's part of the test. A story to illustrate this idea. They say once there was this king who had an advisor where he would take this advisor with him wherever he went. He would go a lot of times hunting, fishing, for walks in nature. He would always take this advisor with him. He was his second-hand man. But there was one thing that annoyed the king about this advisor. You know, like, he was so optimistic. Every time something bad happened to the king, immediately he would tell him, Inshallah khair. Meaning, maybe there's good in this, don't worry. Perhaps it's good for you. Trying to give him hope. But many times this would anger him. Like he would, for example, be drinking hot tea and he'd spill it on himself and get his skin burned. Immediately, what would he would say? What would the advisor come and tell him? Inshallah khair. Maybe there's good in this, don't worry. That would frustrate him sometimes, especially when the situation is a little bit bad or a little bit aggravated. Until one day the king was making himself some food. He was chopping some carrots and by accident, he chopped his finger off. He looked at his advisor. The advisor looked at him back and he said the same thing. Maybe there's good in this, inshallah khair. At this point, the king got so angry at him, he told him, I'm done with you. He ordered the guards to come and take him and threw him in prison. And they locked him up in prison, and that was that. They forgot about him, they tossed him in prison, and that was the end of that advisor. So the years went on, the king continued on in his life, and as I said, he would continue going on his walks in nature, going hiking, going fishing, going hunting. One day he was going hiking, he was going hunting in the woods, and he suddenly lost his way back. And he didn't have anybody with him. His advisor was locked up in prison. He didn't have anybody with him. He lost his way back, and it was getting dark, and he was panicking. What do? I'm in the middle of the woods. There are perhaps wolves or snakes or wild animals and beasts out there. So he started to get very scared for his life, until he saw a bunch of people making sounds, holding torches. There was light coming from a distance. So he approached them. It's a tribe. There's people. Let me go towards them so I can stay with them for the night until the next day and the sun comes up and I find my way back, hopefully. So he approaches them and they spot him too. They see him. They start charging at him too. They get closer to him. He's about to greet them. They don't respond to him. They capture him. They tie his hands, they tie his feet, and they start carrying him. And they speak in a tribal language he doesn't understand. He doesn't know what's going on. But they got him all tied up, and he's like, something is not right. So they take him towards their tribe, and he sees a big fire. They place him by the fire, and they're getting ready to slaughter him right on the spot and kill him. What's going on? It turns out this is a pagan tribe that once a year they need to offer a sacrifice towards the god that they worship as a form of respect to their god. So they captured him this year and they were getting ready to offer him as a sacrifice, basically slaughter him as a sacrifice to the god that they worship. So as they were getting ready to slaughter him, they stop. They look at his hand, they're like, there's a problem in his hand. He has a disfigured body. We can't offer this. This is disrespect to our God. We need to look for something else. So they untie him and they let him go. This king right now is basically like he's been given a new life. He thought he was about to face death and suddenly he's been let off the hook. So he runs back home. Eventually the next day he finds his way back. He runs back to the palace. He runs straight to the prison. And he goes and he thanks his advisor. He tells him, you were right. You were right. When I chopped off my finger and you said, Inshallah khair, there's good in this, I didn't realize it at that moment. Years later, I now see the result, the wisdom behind what happened. So I thank you for that. But I have one question for you. When you got me pissed off and angry and I sent you to prison and you spent many years now, this is like he's coming back after like 5 years. he comes to him and he tells him, well, when I sent you to prison and the guards were taking you to prison, I heard you say, Alhamdulillah wa inshallah khair, like you always do. What was khair in those 5 years, you being in prison? Why did you say that? So the advisor thought for a moment. He told him, well, don't I always accompany you wherever you go? He told him, yes. He said, well, when you were on your hunting mission and you were captured by the tribe and they were getting ready to sacrifice you, I was going to be with you on that day. They looked at your hand, it was disfigured. You had a missing finger, so they left you. But if I was with you, there's nothing wrong with me. They would have taken me and sacrificed me. The king looked at him, he said, you are very right. So he thanked him, and the moral of the story is that sometimes the wisdom behind our efforts doesn't show until years ahead. And same thing comes when we are preparing for the reappearance of the Imam. And remember that every single tiny act that you do, don't underestimate it. You never know which one could be the one that will save you on the day of judgment. Don't underestimate any good deed, like the hadith says. The hadith says Allah has hidden His pleasure in acts of goodness, so that you don't underestimate any one of them, because you never know which one could hit the jackpot and save you on the day of judgment. A real story that's mentioned by a person who went into a coma and came back to life. He shared what he saw during those 2 weeks he was in a coma. He says, I saw the day of judgment in front of me. I was being taken by the angels and getting ready for the day of judgment to begin. They took me to the court. They were going through my good deeds and bad deeds. It's a true story by someone who was interviewed. He went through a coma and he had this vision. He says that I was getting very scared for myself when I saw that my good deeds and bad deeds were weighing very equal to each other, to the point where I started losing hope. And just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the angels tell him, you have been forgiven. Why? The angels tell him, because of one good deed that you did. What was that good deed? They tell him, one day you had this spoiled bottle of water. It was spoiled. It was perhaps in the sun. It was no longer good to drink. And you were like, should I throw this away, or should I go outside and sprinkle it on some plant and feed it? A debate went in his mind, and eventually he decided, let me go outside and just give it to some plant and sprinkle it over some plant, water some plant, instead of just me throwing it away. The angels tell him, this very deed that you did, an act of charity towards a creation of Allah, a plant, Allah is saving you just because of this act of sincerity. This one act of sincerity, Allah is saving you. So imagine now what reward Allah will give you for feeding an animal. What reward Allah will give you for feeding a child, feeding a human. If Allah rewarded him just for feeding giving water to a little plant outside, He rewarded him like that. What about donating water, giving water to a thirsty child, or a thirsty human, or a hungry human? What did they do to Imam Al-Hussein A.S. on the day of Ashura? Imam Zain Al-Abidin A.S., every single time he would drink water, his tears would start rolling, mixing with the water that he's drinking or the food that he's eating. He would always remember his father, every single day. They told him, isn't it enough? After years, isn't it enough? How many years until you will get over this tragedy? Every single time, every single day you eat or drink and you start crying for your father. Imam Zain al-Abidin responded to him, rebuked him, and told him, my father, Sayyid Shabab Ahl al-Jannah, He was denied a basic right. They refused to give him water. Until on the day of Ashura, he was exhausted, he was alone, all of his family was killed, his children were killed, he was left all alone. Hadiths say that he was sick and tired of this dunya. He looked at the dunya around him, nobody was helping him, people were watching. He looked at the dunya sick and tired of everyone, exhausted and tired. And eventually he fell to the ground and he was slaughtered, thirsty and denied a single drop of water. One of the famous, well-known speakers, well-known scholars, he shares a dream, a very touching dream that he had seen. He says that I saw the companions on the day of Ashura when they were killed, how they would all ascend, their souls ascending to Allah, being greeted one by one, one after the other by the Holy Prophet. Every single one of them, whenever they would be martyred and their soul ascends, the Prophet was waiting, holding a cup of water to quench their thirst. One after the other, they would be greeted by the Prophet and be given the glass of water and quenching their thirst. Until one man came and he was given the cup of water, but he refused to drink it. He said, I'm waiting for my brother Al-Hussein to come and I'm not going to drink before him. Who was this man? It was Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. He waited for his brother and refused to drink even after he was martyred. According to this man, he saw the dream, he saw the companions one after the other, and he saw Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, and even after he was martyred, he refused to drink, waiting for his brother to come first, so he could drink first, and then he will drink after him. But eventually all of them, they were quenched, they were given water. But Al-Imam Zayn al-Abidin had to endure many years after the tragedy of Karbala, thinking about what happened every single day. He saw it all in front of him. He saw his brothers martyred in front of him. He saw his younger brother, the baby, Tufl al-Radi', a three-pronged arrow, beheading him from one side to the other. He saw it all. He saw his father in front of him as he was surrounded by the enemies of Allah, pelting him with stones falling from his horse, surrounded by the enemies of Allah and slaughtered. He saw it in front of him. These scars, these mental scars, he had to live with them for 30 years. 34 years after Karbala, Imam Zayn al-Abidin had to remember this and go through this every single day. After Karbala, when they were taken as prisoners of war, Imam Zayn al-Abidin and his family, and the women of the family of Imam al-Hussein and the young children, it was such a difficult journey. Many days walking in the deserts, strangers in the deserts. They were walking under the sun until the narrations say their skin was being peeled. Their skin was being peeled from the sun. They sat them on camels without saddles, without any protection, without any covering, until they eventually arrived to Sham. And even when they arrived, they made them wait for 3 days by the palace before they were allowed to enter. A man by the name of Saleh ibn Sa'd, he enters the city of Sham. He sees it's being decorated. He asks, what's the matter? Why is the city being decorated? He asks someone over there. They tell him that the government has just achieved victory and they have captured prisoners of war, and they are captured and they are placed by the gates of the palace. Sahal ibn Sa'd, he's like, I need to go see who these people are. He goes to the gate of the palace. He sees prisoners of war being shackled, waiting under the sun, their skin peeling off. But he sees there is a light coming from their faces. There is nobility coming from their faces. Who are these people? He approaches them and he sees a little young girl. He asks, who are you? What's your name? She says, my name is Sakina. Who's your father? She points to a spear with a head placed on top of the spear. And it's the blessed head of Imam Al-Hussein under the sun. He looks to another man by the side. He asks him, who are you? He says, I'm Ali ibn al-Hussein. He looks at the Imam. He tells him, is there anything I can do to help you right now? The Imam tells him, can you just give me an old piece of cloth? The man tells him, sure. He finds a piece of cloth and he gives it to the Imam, waiting to see what he's going to do with this. And he places it between the chain that's grabbing onto his neck. This chain on his neck has been grabbing onto his neck for weeks. He puts the piece of cloth between the metal chain and his neck, and he takes it out, and it's drenched in blood. And it's dripping in blood. The Imam had scars on his neck, on his ankles, on his wrists for the rest of his life. Eventually he went back to the city of Medina. The people of Medina greet them. He says, after the day of Ashura, there's no longer any happiness. There's no longer any smiling, any happiness until I die. They tell him what happened. He tells them the story. He tells them how Imam Al-Hussein was killed and his brothers were killed. Years after Karbala, a butcher sees him. He sees a butcher getting ready to slaughter a sheep. He stops the butcher before he slaughters it, and he asks the butcher, have you given it some water before you're slaughtering it? The butcher tells him, yes, I have given it water. That's what your grandfather Rasulullah taught us to do. He taught us to give our sheep, our cattle, some water before we slaughter them. The Imam told him, my father Al-Hussein was killed without giving him any single drop of water. Sheep are given water before they're slaughtered, but my father was killed exhausted and tired and dizzy, and they slaughtered him without any single drop of water. They realized why the Imam every single day he would cry for his father, and he never forgot his father. They realized why the Imam every single time he drank something, his tears mixed with his food, with his water. Now they realized why the Imam every single day he would remember his father. Eventually the Imam was poisoned and killed. As if all of the physical scars and the mental scars from Karbala was not enough, eventually they poisoned the Imam. The poison was getting very severe on himself. He knew my time was coming. He called all of his family members and told them, I'm getting ready to leave. He bid everybody farewell. He lied on the ground. He closed his eyes and eventually he passed away. His soul departed. Imam Al-Baqir, he was 4 years old during Karbala. He was a witness over there. When he was getting ready to wash the body of his father, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, they were getting ready to wash the body. He saw it was skinny, a skinny body, barely would eat any food. They called him Sayyid al-Sajidin. He would spend the whole day in prostration. His body was frail, his body was skinny. They looked at his body, they looked at his neck. He still had the scars of Karbala. They looked at his wrists, they still had scars. They looked at his ankles were also shackled. They still had scars from Karbala. His body was bruised. They looked at his shoulders. The shoulders were also bruised. They asked Imam Al-Baqir, why are his shoulders bruised? Imam Al-Baqir told him every single night he would carry loaves and baskets and bags of bread and food, and he would go out in the middle of the night carrying this burden, placing food by the head of every orphan and poor person who would sleep on the streets at night. until when he passed away, these poor people would no longer wake up to see any food by their beds. They knew this whole time it was Imam Zain al-Abidin. Every single night he would put these food by the sides of their bed. They knew this whole time it was Imam Zain al-Abidin when he left this world, and they no longer saw any of that. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Imam Zain al-Abidin narrates, Imam al-Baqir, he narrates this to us about Imam Zain al-Abidin, that when he was they were getting ready to bury his body, all of the scars were left on his body from Karbala, from the chains, from the shackles. But what about the body of Imam al-Hussein when he was buried? Imam Zain al-Abidin, 3 days after the tragedy of Karbala, 3 days after Ashura, he came back to bury his father. He came back and he saw all of the bodies lying down. He saw a group of birds hovering over one body, giving it shade from the sun. 3 days lying under the sun. The body of Imam al-Hussein, not only was it filled with scars, not only was it filled with blood, but even the sun was hitting his body for 3 days left. Imam Zain al-Abidin, he comes to the body of his father, he picks up the pieces. Eventually he lowers his body into the ground and he stands over the grave and he addresses his father. He tells him, أَمَّا الدُّنْيَا فَبَعْدَكَ مُظْلِمَةٌ. After you, life is dark and gloomy. There is no happiness after you. 34 years after Karbala, Imam Zain al-Abidin had to remember this. He said, أَمَّا الدُّنْيَا فَبَعْدَكَ مُظْلِمَةٌ. After you, this life is dark and gloomy. وَأَمَّا الْآخِرَةُ فَبِنُورِكَ مُشْرِقَةٌ. And as for the afterlife, it has now been lit up from your nur. The angels, the people of the heavens now see your light. But this world is still gloomy after you. We tell our Imam al-Hussein, أَمَّا الدُّنْيَا فَبَعْدَكَ مُظْلِمَةٌ. إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا آلَ مُحَمَّدٍ أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Let's do tawassul to Imam Zain al-Abidin. يا أبا الحسن، يا علي بن الحسين، يا زين العابدين، يا ابن رسول الله، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. Let's recite this ayah 5 times. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. 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 We end with a dua for the hastening of the reappearance of our Imam. Altogether, dua al-Faraj. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة، وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله